everyone, I'm Alanah, and welcome to this discussion of, we're going to do episode 6 and 7 of The Last of Us as briefly as possible. Where today I'm joined by two new friends. Who is this? I don't know if your perspectives are the same. Car, who are you?
Hi.
And what are you doing here?
You asked me. No, I'm just playing. My name is Kahlief Adams. I run the Spawn on Me podcast, the premier podcast spotlighting people of color in the video game industry. And I'm excited to be here, rocking with you, both of you, and talking more Last of Us.
And Lucy, who are you? What are you doing here? How did you get on this call?
You sent me a link, man. No, I'm Lucy James. I work for GameSpot and Giant Bomb, and you might know me from the Friends of a Second podcast with Scale Up the Completionist and Jake Baldino.
A bunch of great people. So first things first, how do you all feel about the show in general thus far? What are your Last of Us impressions of the whole season?
Yeah, they are nailing this in a way that I did not expect. I was, not skeptical if they were going to be able to pull this off, because once you go to HBO, it feels like that is a testament to where you've gotten from a quality perspective, even before they kind of start the show off. But as a person who's loved both games and gotten a chance to stay with those feelings and emotions for a long period of time, like, they are doing fun stuff in this series that I didn't foresee, and it is connecting me back to that story in a way that I just, remembered and didn't remember because of the new stuff that they're kind of throwing in that also elevates it to a certain level of standard that I think is just so good right now. They're killing it in lots of different ways.
I definitely think they did a very good job of making sure it's still like fresh for us, the people who play the games, and for new audience as well. Like, I feel like they fully nailed that. Lucy, how are you feeling about it?
I agree. I totally agree. I think all of the additions and like slight tweaks are super, super clever, but they know why people connected to that story and to those characters. They are definitely playing into that and kind of fleshing them out a bit more. Obviously, the stuff with Bill and Frank was super important, and from what we saw from Riley and Ellie in the Left Behind episode. But like overall, I just think, yeah, they're nailing it. It is wild how good it is, and I'm just so excited to have like appointment viewing TV back again, because it feels like we haven't had anything like this. Maybe House of the Dragon, but I didn't actually watch that one.
I stopped watching really fast. Yeah.
I had to cover Game of Thrones for years, so I
give yourself a break. Yeah.
But like
I agree. Nice. It's so nice to have the like weekly conversation that we're having right now. I feel like that's awesome. And dude, isn't it just super nice to have a good video game adaptation? like it's like, oh, it can be done. Like, my God.
But we're on like what a trajectory right now, because we've got Arcane and then Edge Runners.
Yeah.
So animation covered,
killing it. Castlevania.
Castlevania, yeah. And then live action is like, okay, well, now we're bringing this to the plate. So
it looked good and it sounded good, but even like from episode 1, I was like, what if they can't do it? And then every episode you're like, thank God. Like, oh my God.
Bella and Pedro are acting their asses off in this thing. It's like, I don't know. I had an expectation for what that was also going to be, and I was like, I wasn't as big a Pedro fan because I didn't really get into Mandalorian and all the other kind of stuff.
Sure.
But he has ingratiated himself into my life. I want him to be family now. I'm like, I need your essence and energy around me all the time. And Bella continues to just like showcase her work in so many different avenues, and the emotional range she hits is just so
Everybody,
good.
I think, like, the guy who gets shot in episode 5 and he's like talking about his mom or whatever. I was like, damn, HBO,
right?
And then Henry and Sam, the guy who played Henry, was just like one of the best performances I've seen on TV, especially considering how small his actual runtime was, like how painful that was to watch. It's just, the performances are amazing. And I feel like that is HBO staple.
Truly.
Flavor.
But also like Craig Mathison from The Hangover, pit stop with Chernobyl, which is again, one of the best shows I think that has come out of HBO.
I haven't seen it yet. I really need to.
It's really good, but also be in the right state of mind for it.
It's depressing.
Yep.
It's depressing because it's all like basically just the failure of a government and like everyone trying to cover it up.
Yay!
And so it's very frustrating watch, but also it's impeccably made. And with Last of Us as well, very depressing, but it does a really great job of balancing like the human moments and and the jokes. And when a couple episodes back, when Ellie gets the joke book and she's telling Joel, and I was like, oh my God, my heart can't take this.
Totally. Never loved a pun so much. And speaking of the human moments, if we touch on episode 6, I feel like episode 6 is a lot of human moments. Do I have my episodes right? I do, right? Yeah, okay, I do. Episode 6 is where they actually go to Jackson and we see Ellie learn a little bit about Sarah, and we have some of the big conflicts that came from the game play out. In general, how did you guys feel about everything that went down in episode 6?
Lucy, you go first.
Oh, me. Okay. I mean, episode 6 was it's kind of, I realized that the episode's kind of coming in waves where you have these big emotional moments and then you kind of need like a decompress episode. And episode 6 for me was a little bit of a decompress, even though the stakes kept being raised in certain ways. I was just kind of thinking about it because, and I know this is not comparable at all, but there was a storm in San Francisco earlier this year, and I was like, well, I am so underprepared if anything was to happen. What would I miss the most? And then having the episode 6 where they're in like basically a town and they kind of get that taste of what it used to be like and a taste of normality and not necessarily having to struggle as much. It just felt like, I thought the way they portrayed that was great, but also the human moments with, Ellie and finding out about Sarah, they still managed to hit, even though they kind of, this is the respite. It still manages to hit.
I hadn't considered that it's coming in waves, but you're probably right that we had a lot of tension and action. I feel like the previous episode, episode 5, was all tension, like 100% of the time. And then we see there's still a lot of tension in episode 6, especially Joel and Tommy and their conversation of what we're seeing happen to Joel and like the conflict between him potentially leaving. I didn't love episode 6 as much overall, because I just felt like, and I know it's so hard to even say if like my brain is even remembering this correctly, but I felt like some of those Joel and Ellie moments were stronger in the game because they had a little bit more time. And I think that that's my biggest thing about the show so far, which is to its credit that I keep being like, I just wish we had more time with this. Yeah. It's like tough to care about something, then watch it just get pulled away really quickly, or like be like, oh, is he going to leave her? What's the thought process behind this? And then it very quickly he changes his mind. But all of their relationship development, I feel like, has been pretty much on point in terms of pacing, which is like expertly done. Carl, how did you feel about episode 6? Oh, sorry, Lucy.
I was gonna say the reunion as well between Joel and Tommy
was beautiful. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like such a good moment of that yell that Tommy, like, oh my God, like finding him and seeing that he was alive and all those kinds of pieces. And it did have a lot of those kind of like tamped down moments where it felt like, oh, for this one piece of time, they feel safe here. And it felt nice for them to, as a viewer, to say, oh my goodness, you have people here who understand how this new world works and are giving you space to kind of live in it if you choose to. So it does kind of lean into what you talked about, Alanah, with the kind of sped up version of what we get with the show, where I'm just like, oh man, like there was a space here to kind of let it sit and linger for a little bit longer than I had hoped for. But I just remember and pulled away from like all those little strands of things of, just seeing all the kids kind of sitting around in the movie theater and hanging out and watching the movie. And I was like, even right now, I feel like with the pandemic still happening, those moments have still been stripped away from us in a way that still I'm longing to get back to in a weird way. So like Jackson in the game or in the movie or in the show and real life, they also had this interesting parallel there too, of saying like, man, there is still a want to feel safe where I want to go and feel like those places are still there.
It's super interesting that this was like technically in development before the pandemic and that it hits so differently now. Like we have such a different context of it all now. Yeah. Which I guess I appreciate. Like it was so depressing when The Last of Us Part 2 came out at the time that it did. But almost to its credit, like it's so burned into my brain how awful I felt playing through some of that game, while how awful I felt in a studio apartment. Like it's so rough, and I think this is like feels a little bit more reflective. And I love the slice of life stuff in episode 6, where like they do keep giving us the opportunity to be like, hey, this is what life would have been like, because Jackson isn't something that we really had that way in part 1. Obviously, it's in part 2,
right?
And it was nice to see how spot on accurate it was too. Like so blown away by the set design. Like so much of it is so incredible.
I haven't read it yet, but I know this is for episode 7, but like they did do a deep dive into how they recreated the mall, and I really hope, if they haven't done one for how they did Jackson, I would love.
How did they do the like?
I haven't read it yet. I think it was on Variety.
The mall
I gotta watch that. That was dope.
I was like, how did they get all those brands? Is that a real mall? Because they had an A&W, which I know is Canadian, and I was like, well, they did shoot in Canada. Was it a real A&W? Yeah. Like it just looked amazing, like mind-blowingly cool. How did you all feel about some of the conflict that we had between Joel and Tommy in terms of like all this, like, you used to be a bad guy. They're really trying to paint Joel as evil in a way that I feel like is a little less prevalent in the game, unless I'm misremembering. How'd you feel about that sort of concept?
Joel was such a man in this episode. He was such a dude. And I was like, yo, use your words, fam. Like, I know you have things
Real Tony Soprano vibes.
Yeah.
Just go to a therapist, dude.
We were like looking at we were like, yo, use your words. You found your brother. And the way that you are trying to disconnect yourself from him after you've done nothing but bemoan and talk about how important it was for you to find him, and now you have him and you're pushing him away instantly. That felt a little bit weird in terms of the writing, and also kind of felt like that isn't the way I would have thought that connection would have gone, both from what we saw in game, and this kind of, gap filler between, the story of what we know and what we played. So that part was a little bit worrisome, and also in weird the way that he kind of spoke to Ellie in a lot of those sections and moments too, where it was like, again, we understand that you have the mission. We know you're trying to disconnect from, having an emotional relationship with this person who you don't know, who you're supposed to take care of. But also, use your words, fam. You gotta talk to her like she's a human being, and not just like roll around and be in your dude-dom for no reason. It didn't make any sense to me. It was stupid.
I think it's totally frustrating, but I feel like I find that frustrating in a way that's to credit to his character. Yeah. Like, it makes sense that he's still that defensive and closed off. And I've had a ton of frustrations with Ellie throughout the show that I think have like slowly been alleviated, especially through episode 7, where I've been like, why is she so harsh? And I get that she's a child of effectively like a global catastrophe. But if I had a random grown man I didn't know walking me through the wilderness, I would be very nice to him. Like, I would be excessively polite and maybe uncomfortable. Like, I'd be like, I don't know this dude at all. What's going to happen? Like, this is stranger danger to a max. And she's like so rude to him. It's like, I don't know, dude. We had different childhoods, I guess. But I feel like episode 7, to jump forward, contextualized Ellie in a really, really fantastic way. And I think this is Bella Ramsey's like most impactful performance yet. Like, she absolutely killed it. Yeah. So before we do jump ahead there, Lucy, did you have any input on how they handled Joel in episode 6 and some of those conflicts there?
I mean, no, nothing really beyond what Carr said. Like, I mean, kind of a classic dude thing is to lock down when things get a little bit too heavy. And it is kind of like frustrating a little bit as a viewer of just the show to watch, because you're like, why is he doing this? We thought Joel was better than this. And then ultimately, like, at the end of the day, he is human. We know what is coming. And I guess they're kind of laying the groundwork for some upcoming stuff a little bit. But ultimately, I thought it's still like really well portrayed, and just the way that everyone else calls him on it and just like pushes him, I think is really, really important, that they don't let it lie. And, stuff's changing so much for them. And he's spent 20 years waiting to see his brother again. Well, maybe not that long, but a good amount of time. Good amount of time. And then it's kind of again a nice human moment where I could not see my sister for a couple of years, and then we would immediately be like, "Hey, good to see you, miss you, love you." And then it's, "Oh my god, leave me alone." Like, kind of go back into the familial stuff. So I get it.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, come on, Joel, grow up.
I did feel like they were very excessive on talking about how much of a bad dude he was, in a way that I don't remember being there in the game, but I'm not sure. Like, everyone's like, he was up to bad stuff, and it was like Tommy didn't forgive him, and I was like, I imagine that this is alluding to his decision at the end being more impactful, because I'm not really sure. I'm unsure. It was,
I assume
they were very thorough with it, probably.
Yeah, I assume it is, because, like, I guess in the show they're not killing as many people as you end up doing in the game, but I think you still need to have some base awareness that Joel is a badass and he has done a bunch of stuff. As far as I remember, in the game, it's very like front loaded, mostly when you're with Tess.
Yeah,
you're kind of, the unwritten history is there, but I think maybe they are just setting something up for the final.
Yeah, for Joel too, it feels like his reputation precedes him in a way that doesn't make sense either. where it's like he's a bad dude. I'm like, but you're all the way over there. How do you know he's such a bad dude if there are so many more people in the space as they saw when they kind of went to the house and found the folks to kind of find out where Tommy was. So that also is a little bit weird in the way that they kind of have framed that for everybody else in the story too. So yeah, I definitely did pick up on that too.
It definitely leads into season 2 a little bit more softly, I guess.
Yeah.
Like if they set up that he's got some shit coming.
However the hell they're gonna tackle that.
While I'm almost excited. It seems so challenging, especially for a TV audience. Like, oof, really rough.
I just started replaying it yesterday, actually.
Oh, part 2?
Yeah, because I was like, I haven't played it since summer of 2020, and I was like, oh, I'm into it now.
Yeah, it's I've been playing through part 1 again in time with the show, and it's been really fun to do that because I hadn't played part 1 since it came out, not to completion. So it's what, like
2013,
12 years? Yeah, it feels like it's such a long time, and it's really interesting watching the two side by side and how they make different decisions. And like obviously the decision not to go to the school and have the bloater, which is a part that a lot of people really love, but it's so video gamey.
Yeah,
like the hanging upside down thing is like that almost ruins some of the dramatic tension of the show, and I can understand why they didn't. It's to their credit that they know what they're doing. They put it that way. So jump ahead to episode 7. I somehow missed. A lot of people seem to know that this was going to be a Left Behind episode. I didn't know that.
Are you watching the trailers at the end of each?
No.
That's
why.
That's why. Yeah.
Mystery solved. No, I didn't realize, but I was kind of happy not to. And it was an interesting like mirror of episode 3, where it's it's a different timeline. We're seeing a different story, and I really did like the way that it fed into who Ellie is and why she is the way that she is, and the way that they paced it for all of the issues I had with her being overly harsh or whatever. I was like, yeah, you paid it off, which I guess I always thought that they would, but I felt like they really justified a lot of what comes out of her mouth, the amount of sass she has, I think. So how did you feel about episode 7?
Oh, it was so good. It was like Lucy talked about, that kind of nice respite in the kind of ups and downs of what the series has done so far. It just brought back so many good memories of that DLC and understanding that like this is a coming of age story in both the good and bad ways. And it was nice to be able to see Ellie and Bella kind of like go through the process of working through that, and it did round out the character a lot in terms of like, this is a person who has talked about loss, but then you don't really get to see some of that because it is something that happened in the before times, right? So you wind up getting to see that loss happen in real time, in real space, with her then kind of, becoming the Ellie that we are starting to see, flourish in those spaces and become that badass Ellie that we know is coming.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see that interplay between those two, and then also just those really, kind of intimate moments, and there weren't many because Joel is of course injured and hurt at this part of the show. But even that small moment that they had,
where they hold hands,
and there's a let go of some of that gruff because he has to, was nice to see too. And again, it just reflects back the like wonderful performances that they're both nailing on this. So it was really dope.
It was expertly done in the game. The timing of this, the shift of like, oh shit, now I have to care about him. I think that like it's such a testament to The Last of Us and how good the game is that some of these things are really, really similar. And I love the handoff of like, now she has to care. She can't pretend she doesn't care anymore. And it was a really interesting way to do it. Like I didn't even know that they would tackle the Left Behind stuff at all. And again, I love seeing the slice of life things of like what life is like in this world in ways that we couldn't really see so much in the game, or if we were just stuck to Joel's perspective.
They did one really weird thing that is very TV, which is that last scene where they're holding hands, she's sewing him up. And they do the like guitar swell thing, and I was like, no, don't do the guitar swell thing, no.
Listen, they were also really noisy in that mall, and it took them a long time to get caught.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, let's jump down this thing, bang, bang, bang. Yeah. Oh, let me hang out on this thing, bang, bang. I was
Whereas
like, what
anywhere
are you
else
doing?
you make any noise, and they're like,
yeah,
not here.
Not in this mall.
Lucy, how did you feel about episode 7?
I really loved episode 7. I didn't say that about every episode, I know, but like the thing that really got me is obviously getting that Ellie backstory, just kind of getting more of an understanding of just how crap her life was as
Yeah.
is essentially a kid in military school being told you're either going to be this or that, and your life is prescribed for you, and then having the only joy in her life, which is Riley, just vanish, and she thinking that Riley's dead, and then only for Riley to come back and give her the most amazing night of her life. And that is genuinely, you can say that, but it would have been the best night of her life ever. Only for then again another, okay, well, I'm moving to Boston. I'm moving out of Boston even. And then no, I'll stay with you. And then no, we got bit. It was such a roller coaster. And it was, punctuated by these really beautiful and fun moments. But ultimately, my heart was just breaking for Ellie the whole time because it was just devastating.
Is that how it happens in the DLC? I don't remember. Is it that she leaves to join the Fireflies and then comes back after 3 weeks? Was that part of it? I don't think it was, but I don't know.
I don't remember. I haven't played in so long.
Yeah, I know.
She definitely does leave.
Yeah.
I think she does leave, yeah.
Because it is... I like that we saw Ellie before losing Riley, because I was a little like, are they just going to make that the whole crux of her personality? She lost someone, because sure, loss changes us, but not to this extent. So I like that we also see her be like a kind of bratty, shitty teenager before she even realizes she's immune. Like, she was always a little bit like that. And then, she loses the one person that she really cared about, who she felt had her back. So then she's got to be hardened by feeling like she's alone in the world, on top of her also figuring out that she's immune, which makes her feel like she's invincible. It all made a lot of sense. I was just so impressed by the way that they showed Ellie's journey through that one episode, which you're right is consistently heartbreaking. Incredible performances from both actresses, I thought. Bella Ramsey here especially is like, for everyone who doubted her, for whatever reason, I never did. This one, I was like, you can't doubt that. Come on.
There's the Emmy. There's the Emmy.
Yeah, seriously.
Just take it.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're happy for you. But speaking of the mall, yeah, this episode, like, in terms of the set, just mind-blowingly cool. I know this show is extremely expensive, but the lighting and again, do they have to get like approval from every single one of those brands? When there was GameStop, I was like, it us.
The gamers. And like, even just seeing the Body Shop and all those kind of places was just so straight. Because I mean, coming from the UK, at least watching the BBC, brands aren't really allowed to be on TV.
Really?
Yeah, so like on the BBC, they're not really allowed to have too much emphasis on like brands in particular, because then it makes them feel impartial.
Right.
Which,
interesting.
Say what you want about the BBC.
Our ABC in Australia is probably like that then. I've just not noticed. That's super interesting.
They don't really have, they might have changed it since I've been gone, but I remember, always kind of been a bit weird
interesting
about it. But
it was really strange to see things that we recognize, and I kind of am glad they did that, because outside of it being kind of cool, I feel like it hits home for all of us a little bit differently when it's stores that you actually walk past in a mall.
Especially because they changed it to 2013, right, instead of 2003, and so that was peak mall walking around years.
That's true.
Finishing uni, just going around and hanging out and just seeing all those stores. And
the malls I hit up in 2010, let me tell you.
You wouldn't believe the malls I've seen.
Just the same one. It got shut down, actually. It was really, when I went home, my go-to after-school mall, Toombul, is closed. No. It really hurt. Seeing it if you shut down really bothered me. Is the Metro Center still safe?
I
Probably.
have to see.
It got flooded, and so they shut. And I was like, I had my first kiss there. And Toombul, no,
right?
What's happened to you? There's a Body Shop. It's no GameStop because we don't have those, but everything just fell apart, man.
We had Game.
Oh yeah, we had
Station.
Game as well.
Yeah,
Game and EB Games.
Oh yeah.
How did you guys feel about the age difference between these actresses? I saw some people say that they felt like it seemed like Riley was way older. I pictured it just that Riley was a little more mature. They're only 2 years apart, technically. Ellie's 14 and Riley is 16, I believe.
I didn't know there was discourse, but also I looked like an absolute weed of a child until I hit puberty at like 15. So
I think I had the opposite. People always thought I was older than I was. So if we had dated at 14 and 16, maybe we would have been the discourse.
Yeah.
It would have been the problem. People were like, wait a minute, I didn't really
What's
notice
happening here?
I didn't notice anything either until I saw the internet doing as it does.
But hang on, who was asking those questions? Were they people who were aware of teenage girls and what they look like, or
That's a great question. Or like aware of women in general.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, right.
Didn't study that.
It was just interesting
from
from the age part didn't bother me. It didn't feel like there was a huge discrepancy there. Instantly enough, the height differential was the thing that caught me more.
I think that's probably where it came from, is because she was so much taller.
Because in the game, they seemed like they were pretty much almost the same height. So it didn't make the kiss seem as awkward in the game as opposed to in the real life version of it. But it was still, I think that character in Riley, I just continue to remember that one moment where she looks at Ellie and she's like, "I'm sorry." And it was so many versions of sorry within that one phrase, right? I'm sorry that I left you. I'm sorry that I'm leaving you. I'm sorry that I brought you here, and now this is the thing that's going to cause us to die, potentially in those ways. Like, so many versions of what sorry meant in that one moment was really heartfelt.
Yeah.
Really,
really
good.
Chills thinking about that call. I was like, so many
part
sorries in that one sorry.
Yeah, so many sorries in that one sorry. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, and I love seeing the way that these two characters, because they are very different, respond to what's happening to them. Like, Riley's very, like, sad.
Accepting.
And Ellie's just really angry. Yeah. Pretty much top to bottom. And I think that, like, showcasing two people who've come from the same place still having a massively different outlook and how they bounce off each other and how it shapes Ellie. I really feel like they nailed it. I thought they had really great chemistry. I bought that they were best friends turned lovers. It all made sense. And it was really nice to see. There's some stuff that this show has done that this is like the biggest nitpick in the world that I like almost hesitate to say it because people would be like, shut up. Where sometimes Ellie will point out things that are new to her, but because the audience is familiar with them, I'm like, we don't need to see her say that. Like, so university, they just like walked around and went to schools. Right. That stuff happens a lot. And again, I'm like, yeah, you've done that 10 times. I get that it's new for her. We don't need to keep hearing it though. The escalator thing I loved, because when I was a kid, I thought escalators were fucking cool as hell. She just got to run up an escalator as much as she wanted with no security. I was like, that was awesome. And it's really nice to see her be that like happy-go-lucky little girl that we don't really see that much of throughout the rest of the show.
I would have actually lain on it and just gone the whole time.
That's how you see people's like spin on them when they lay in the middle thing. Like, I've never done that. Love to give it a try. Yeah.
Always been chased away.
Same.
Exactly. Maybe we should bring a pandemic back. It seems great.
We're just gonna take over a mall and just do what we want.
It's Dead Rising everywhere. We'll do that.
One other thing that really stood out to me in this episode was the music. We had some really great 80s songs. There was Take On Me, which was awesome, which of course is a throwback to the games as well. And The Cure is Just Like Heaven, which I imagine was a reference to Ellie herself, and how that plays off of her. But yeah, the music in this particular episode was like so evocative of childhood in a weird way, as someone who didn't grow up in the 80s. Like, it was still like, I was like, oh, I'm a kid. Listen to Take On Me for some reason.
It's like the stuff that our parents listened to back then. It's like,
right,
my
you
mom,
don't have a choice.
Big into Aha and Hall & Oates. So like Hall & Oates has shaped me.
I love Hall & Oates, dude.
I
love Hall & Oates.
They're touring right now, but they're touring separately, and it makes me sad.
Wait, really? What?
Yeah, because I don't know why, but I looked this up the other day.
This is just one Hall and one Oat?
Yeah, they're just doing their own thing.
Wait, do they play Hall & Oates music?
I think they do.
Wait, what does Oates do then? Besides playing
Oates
guitar?
is a singer-songwriter. Oates is doing his own thing. He's
Wow.
selling his oats.
Oh.
Nice.
Thank you. That was a little setup just for that.
You only brought up, you were like, oh, she mentions the music because I have this whole bit. I have this Type 5 plan.
Type 5 about Hall & Oates. But no, like music, I loved it. And I used to love what they did with Westworld, which was taking contemporary songs and putting them into, Westworld versions, or what was some of the other worlds, like the Raj, I think, was one of them.
Yeah.
Like making them fit. And I love a good music pick, especially with the Cure one on the roundabout. That's
Carousel.
Carousel, thank you. Roundabout's a car thing.
Yeah.
It's just a roundabout for kids. Same thing, really.
Makes you think.
Yeah. No, the music was beautiful. Set design was beautiful. I was like blown away by the production of this particular episode. And the only thing that I can say negatively about it is it definitely didn't feel like a filler episode to me at all. Like it was so crucial in the information it provided about Ellie. It's just that this particular love story doesn't hit as hard after the peak of episode 3.
Yeah.
I think everything after episode 3, because of how good it was, has to contend with that award-winning, surely episode. That I feel like it almost let this story down a tiny bit because the other one was so strong, which is a bit of a bummer, but kind of unavoidable when you have one of the best episodes of television ever, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The third episode of the show. It's definitely hard to follow. So yeah, I thought it was very, very good. And I don't have any problems with the ways in which it deviated from the game. Personally, that said, it seems like none of us remember Left Behind that well. I gotta go and play it.
You mean you're not like throwing your hands to the sky that they played Mortal Kombat as opposed to something else? Some
No, that was cool. And I love that Ed Boon tweeted about it.
Oh, I was so hyped about that. I was like,
must be so cool for him too. I was like, he didn't know?
Yeah, right?
Nobody told him beforehand? Yeah, I've seen people be disappointed in this episode as well. I try not to pay too much attention, but I'm not entirely sure why. I did see a couple of people do the why they have to make her gay thing, which I love.
Oh gosh.
She was always gay. The whole time. The joke's on you.
The whole time.
The whole time. And yeah, it's gonna be very interesting, I think, from this point to see how they tackle these final 2 episodes, because this is the only thing I keep feeling with the show is that I feel like it's rushed because it has to be. Like we only have 2 left.
That's wild.
So weird. Why is it only 9?
I don't know. They could have made it
HBO
12.
thing?
Are they always 9? I don't know.
I can't remember.
I mean, they can't get to the
Succession, I
end
think,
of that
was 9.
story within 2 episodes. They just can't.
It feels like a lot. Like really, where the end of episode 7 is when we've properly had these 2 characters care about each other, but still not necessarily enough that he would do what he's gonna do.
Because like episode 8 can't be like, hey, I'm all healed up now and I'm gonna run around the rest of the country. Like it can't be that short to get to.
She
where
has
we
to
know
find
it
a
needs to
med
get
kit.
Some rags and some alcohol
Yeah.
combined R2.
And some shivs, surely.
Yeah.
Oh, there was kind of a shiv in this episode, in episode 7, which I was like, they sort of did it. She finally stabbed someone. I was like, yay! Yeah, it feels like we have a lot of ground to cover before the finale, which is like kind of scary. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're gonna make, because one of the episodes, one of the early ones, was it 3? Was like an hour and 15. So I wonder if they'll maybe make one of them
True.
a bit longer.
I feel like I would
4-hour episode.
It'd be
Yeah.
2
Game
4-hour
of
episodes.
Thrones can get away with 90-minute episodes.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have the runtime public somewhere. I just haven't seen it, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
They'll make you just play through it. They'll be like, season finale, go here and go play the game while you still can.
yeah. Yeah, it's just I feel like that would be the whole, like, we haven't finished the season yet, but the thing that prevails now that we are well into the second half is I wish they had made it like an extra couple of episodes, because if it were 12 episodes, we'd have exactly the 12 hours of the game. Not that we want it to be 1-to-1, but there are some things that I'm like, we just have a little bit more. And
Ish. Hey, like a flashback episode of Ish in the sewers was kind of my dream. I really hope they would do that. They did do a little nod. I think they found something that he'd written, but I was like, that story would be so messed up to watch unfold.
it's like brutal. I think that there's like a
With all
little
the
nod to that in
kids.
episode 6. Yeah, it's got it just has to have been very hard to do, to figure out what to keep and what to cut and where to pace things. And I haven't watched the podcast they're doing because I wanted to watch through the whole show first and then watch the podcast so that I didn't like have my opinions colored by it. But I'm sure that they give a lot of context on how much stuff got cut or run times and stuff that I do not envy, because it seems like it's really, really hard. Any closing thoughts before I let you guys go?
Clothing.
Yeah, well, how do you feel about
thoughts, they were
clothing?
great. Needs more hats.
Lack of hats in the show.
Lack of hats is kind of annoying. There aren't a lot of
Especially
bald
when it's
people.
winter.
Yeah.
They're like,
True.
don't really-
Yeah, everyone has hair. I'm a little biased against that.
That's fair. Too much hair. Yeah.
Too much hair
Yeah.
in the spot. I mean, it is just like this continuation of all of the set pieces that we wind up seeing that I think excites me for every week of like, what are they going to pull in that I have a recollection of that will be that touchstone that I'm like, oh, that was that thing. I remember that thing. So that's been pretty good. And the little Easter eggs that they kind of keep popping in and out. Like even when they were in the federal office and he was having a conversation with Ellie about that stuff, him putting down his keys into being a Naughty Dog logo on the keys.
Oh yeah, that was so cool.
I was like, oh, you cheeky mother suckers. I see you. So that stuff is just cool. Just again, like every week, it is must see TV at this point. Like it is regulated to be like I am going to watch this and figure out what the heck is going on.
Yeah,
So
like Lucy said earlier, it's so exciting like to have that be a thing again and like text people about it and do this. Like it is really nice to have, and I'm like almost sad that it's gonna end in 2 weeks.
Yep.
But then Succession's back.
That's true for the last season, I think.
Yeah, last season.
Exciting.
Yeah. But I just love it. I'm just impressed with it. I think that's the main takeaway is I'm so impressed with how they've done it and also just that they've thrown everything behind it. None of it feels half-assed at all. And it's hitting with the audience that is beyond us, which is very, very exciting. And I think everyone in it knows how good it is and they're all just coming at it with their absolute A game. And so I can't wait to see what the last 2 episodes of this season are going to be like, because I mean it's some of just like the darkest stuff in the game, and so I'm just very like I have the confidence that it's going to be good.
It is nice to have the confidence. Yeah, I felt that way the whole way through, that like even in the beginning I was like, I don't really buy their relationship. I was like, they could do it. And you're right, it is just very good. It's very nice and I have faith in it, and it's fun to be on a journey like this of something that we find familiar, and knowing it's in the right hands every episode is really, really nice. And I think like episode 7 I felt was really well written. I imagine there are some challenges for writing 2 teen girls in an apocalypse when you're a grown man, but I feel like it was super well written. I think Neil wrote this one actually, but I was super impressed by it. And funnily enough, this is actually the only episode that I feel like could have been slightly shorter, but to add other things in would be I would have had a little bit more of Joel and a little bit less of, but that's it. Only just occurred to me, so clearly I don't feel very strongly about it. 2 more weeks, I will have this show up, everybody, but to say goodbye to this week's guests, Carl, where can people find you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, check out more Spawn on Me, where we started off our 10th year of podcasting. Yeah, it's wild. You can check that out on every podcast platform on the planet and check out some of the fun stuff we're doing there. We just finished our award show, The Spawnies, as well, so go check that out on YouTube for our 2nd year of doing that. And I'm sure I'll get into some more trouble before the end of the year, so you'll find me doing more fun stuff and hopefully more collaborations with y'all. That would be really, really dope.
Yeah, always. Yeah, Lucy, how about you?
You can find me on GameSpot and Giant Bomb and on the Friends Per Second podcast, which is on every podcast platform, and the Skill Up YouTube channel.
I will leave links in the description below to where you can find these wonderful people. Thank you both for joining me, and I will see you all next week. Bye.
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 Bye.